So my goal in this episode is to raise your awareness to 5 things, or I guess 5 new understandings that will hopefully help you in your journey. Podcast Growth Nation, welcome back to another very special, as always, episode of Podcast Growth University, where we talk all things podcasting all the time. I hope you enjoyed the latest episode number 22, a reframe on making money from your podcast. Today, for episode number 23, 5 things I wish I knew when I started podcasting. So, as of today, I don't know. We recorded 1,157. I think that was the latest episode we recorded. I think we have 23 of this. So almost 1,200 podcast episodes we've recorded and produced. And then I've probably been on 400-ish other shows. So I've learned a lot, and I've definitely learned more in the last year than I probably have in the previous 4.5 or 5, however long we've been doing this. So I thought to myself, okay, I like episodes like this. As somebody who loves learning, I like the 5 things I wish I knew, or 5 things I would tell myself at the beginning. So I figured, well, I've done a lot of very specific episodes. Let me do one that's a little bit more broad, but hopefully 5 times as valuable, or at least as valuable as the other ones. I am going to try to get off here in 15 minutes because I have another call in 13 minutes, so we'll see what happens. All right. So my goal in this episode is to raise your awareness to 5 things, or I guess 5 new understandings that will hopefully help you in your journey. So it's not going to be super tactical, but it's going to be a deeper understanding episode. Let's just get right into it, because that's what we do. Number 1, what you do before and after your episodes are just as important as what you do during. So I've had a lot of people say, I'm recording an episode a week and I'm doing this, and it's, I have the microphone and I have the backdrop and I have great guests. Why isn't anything changing? And I always say, well, what are you doing before? And what are you doing after? Because what you're doing during the episode, like, that's the shiny portion of it. That's the stuff that people see. That's the result, right? That's what people see. It's the episode. It's the highlight reel. But what you're doing before, in terms of your prepping for your episodes, in terms of your own self-improvement and understanding what you're talking about, what you're doing after in terms of promotion, in terms of connecting with your audience, in terms of posting in your Facebook group, in terms of sending emails out, in terms of marketing and sales, a lot of people assume that it's what you do on the microphone. And to some degree it is, but think about it. If you follow a musician, you follow an actor or an actress, you follow some sort of athlete, them on the field, them on the stage, them on the screen, that is the least amount of time for them. They're prepping, and then they're doing stuff after that to make sure that they can show up next time as good as they just were. So in the beginning, I assumed that this right now, what I'm doing, was the most important thing. And it is, but the other 2, before and after, are just a little less important. And honestly, in the long run, they're just as important. It's almost like, while I'm doing this, this is the most valuable use of my time. The second this ends, how do I make sure this gets seen by as many people? How do I make sure I'm adding value to the people who are already in the community? Before I do this, how do I make sure this episode's actually going to land? How do I make sure that the title's good? How do I make sure that I know what I'm going to ask the guest? How do I make sure that, there's just so many things that really, really go into it. So I guess number 1 could be, I didn't understand how much actually went into a podcast. I thought you just recorded the episode, threw it out there, did a little social media promotion, and you're off to the races. Last week, we were in Toronto. So if you heard, no, I did the episode the day after Thanksgiving when we got back, but the previous episode, we were in Milwaukee before we went to Toronto. And the reason we were in Toronto is we were interviewing one of our mentors. And it was very interesting because he said, I messaged you when I was thinking of somebody who I wanted to come to Toronto and interview me for my YouTube channel, which has 3.5 million subscribers or something. He said, I thought of you guys. And I'm connecting it to, it's because what we did before we interviewed him and what we did after. We made sure we came correct. We made sure that we knew the questions and we knew they were going to be valuable, and we hoped that they were questions he hadn't heard before. So what you do before and after is just as important as what you're doing during your interviews and or solo episodes. Number 2, this is a big one that I have been really, really focused on with clients. Understanding the difference between having a podcast for quote unquote free marketing and how much of podcast success comes down to sales. So this is the way I like to think of it. I've had a lot of people say, all right, Kev, I'm ready to start coaching, or I'm ready to start promoting a course, or I'm going to do a retreat, or I'm going to do a live event, or I'm going to do a mastermind, a masterclass, whatever it is. I'll just start talking about it on the podcast and then people are going to come, right? And I always say, no, that's not the way it works. You have a misunderstanding between what marketing is and what sales is. Marketing, for the most part, is making people aware of what it is that you're doing. Sales is you getting people to actually show up. So in the beginning, I assumed that if we had an event, that everybody would just show up. I mean, even at the time where we had 200,000 downloads, I was like, that's a lot of people. Well, how many, number one, if it's an in-person event, how many of those people don't live close enough to actually attend? All right. How many of those people can afford to fly out? How many of those people can afford tickets? I assumed that the podcast was going to do all the marketing and everything was just going to happen and people were going to show up and there'd be money in the bank account. What I've learned and what I am always talking to my clients about is, honestly, the podcast opens the door. It helps you build a relationship with somebody. It helps you build a community through value, but then it's your job to get some sort of purchasing decision across the line. I wish I understood the importance of sales. I wish I understood the importance of how to have a conversation with somebody based on value that would then lead to the opportunity for more value on both ends. I really think that's an important understanding for people, especially if you're just starting. I can almost promise you it will be harder than you think in terms of if your thought process is, I have a podcast that's free marketing, people are going to reach out. Some people will reach out, but the conversion rate is very, very low. It's much lower than most people say. Either we suck, and that's definitely a possibility. I don't think so. Or a lot of other people are elevating their numbers. And again, we live in social media land where if I say, well, it was a struggle to fill 8 groups of 10 people each over the last 2 years, people might look down on that and say, oh, I could do that easily, where a lot of people can't really. So I would say that. Number 2, I wish I knew the difference between sales and marketing, and I wish I knew the importance of sales. Because at the end of the day, when you're talking to somebody, you're influencing them. Right now, if you are listening to what I'm saying, I am influencing you. Hopefully, I'm influencing you to make a better decision with your podcast. But if you and I are talking behind the scenes and you're trying to influence me to go to a movie, that's sales. So understanding the importance of sales, I would say, is one of the biggest things I wish I knew. And honestly, one of the biggest things I hope everybody else will learn. Number 3, and this one's going to probably hit pretty close to home for many of us. The third thing I wish I knew when I started is how much of the advice that I was getting was bad. Just because somebody is a quote unquote podcaster does not mean they're a successful podcaster. I've recently leaned into doing more podcast specific speaking, and I've done a lot more coaching over the last year, but I was thinking the other day, I saw somebody that I have coached in the past who I know doesn't really understand podcasting that much. I saw them get a speaking opportunity, and that connected something in my mind of, okay, this person is going to teach podcasters about podcasting when this person doesn't really know that much about podcasting. So the advice that they're going to be able to give is not necessarily going to be super valuable. A lot of the advice I got in the beginning was based on just the fact that people had podcasts and they would say, okay, this is what I've done that's worked. This is what I do that's working. You have to understand that the goals for everybody is a little bit different. right? Some people just want to do, and I'm not saying this is a bad thing. Some people just want to do an episode a week. They're not really thinking about making money. If they can cover their expenses, that's great. There's other people who want to do 7 episodes a week like us, and that's completely different advice. So I would break it into this. A lot of the advice I got in the very beginning was terrible.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Hurvitz. So last year I wanted to quit everything. I wanted to throw in the towel. I wanted to hang up my microphone. And Kevin said no. Kevin said, keep going, Jen. You've got this. And oh my God, I'm going to cry. And I did. Coaches need coaches, y'all. And working with Kevin has been one of the best experiences of my life. Oh my God, I'm crying. Kevin, you are the best. I could not do this without you. And thank you. Thank you for being you and the amazing human that you are.
Part 2 of that is the advice you're getting from somebody is only as valuable as your missions are aligned. So if you come to me and say, I want to do 1 episode a week, what do I do? That is relatively easy for us at this point because we do 7. But it's only easy for us because we want to have the most successful podcast in the world. If you come to me and say, I want to do 7 episodes a week, I know what that'll take because that's what we're doing. So it's almost like the value of somebody's advice is only based on the experience they have in the arena you're trying to get into. So I don't know. I think part of me wishes I took less advice because we definitely had some advice that took us off the rails that didn't necessarily help us. It probably actually slowed us down, but in the beginning, you don't really know. And honestly, that's the reason I do these episodes the way I do, because I just want to give you the best advice I possibly can. And sometimes it's hard for me to come up with topics because I want to make sure they're actually valuable. So even in this episode, I got to make sure I stay on time, but I got to text Alan. All right. Number 3, how much of the advice I was getting was bad, and understanding contextually the value of somebody's advice is based on their experience. I would say that's the 3rd point. Number 4, and this is a big one that this might be the biggest one. Number 4, I wish I knew and had a deeper understanding of business. So a lot of people, they get into a podcast and they want to make money right away. And there are ways to do that, but it's not going to be life-changing money. And they don't understand that a podcast is a business, and businesses take years to become financially viable, right? So if you think of like a company like Uber, think of any company, product, service, app that you use every day, they most likely didn't make money right away, and they most likely took years to make money. I think we forget about that when we do a podcast or a YouTube channel or whatever it is. This is a business. You're starting a business is really what you're doing. If you don't have an understanding of how business works overall, if you don't have an understanding of how to run a business, of what matters in a business, it's going to be very hard to win unless you get lucky. That's what I would say about that. And I'm talking to myself too. I had no idea how much this was going to take in the beginning in terms of my awareness. There is so much going on behind the scenes that nobody really knows about. Not that we're hiding it. It's just a lot of people don't need to know because they're not trying to do what we're trying to do. A great book for you out there. If you're a podcaster, and I know you might say, this doesn't make any sense. Like, why should I listen to this? Just trust me. It'll help you connect dots that you don't know you need to connect yet. It's a book by Donald Miller called Business Made Simple. It's very, very impactful. It's broken down into simple and easy to understand chapters and points. One of the best books I've ever read. It's almost like, think about it this way. Best case scenario, you start a podcast, you get 500,000 downloads the first month, and then people start paying you. But the problem is you have to understand business enough to create a product that they would pay for. Then you have to understand how to scale that product. Then at some point, you're going to have to understand how to hire people. There's a lot that goes into that. So I think the 4th might be the most important one. I wish I had, and I wish I knew business at a deeper level. I know it at a very deep level now comparatively, but I need to continue learning because as we grow and evolve and become quote unquote successful more, I need to know more as the CFO of our other podcast. So yeah, A Deeper Understanding of Business. If you take nothing away from this episode, go download that book, find that book. I'm sure you can find it on Google and read it and or listen to it. It's unreasonably valuable. And the fifth one, I wish I knew how small the podcast community really is. I mean, you hear, well, there's 3 million podcasts, or at this time, there might be 3.5 million. But what we don't take into effect and we don't take into account is the vast majority of those podcasts are no longer in production. Podcasting is a very, very small community. I mean, if there's 500,000 shows and say you're in the self-improvement industry, how many self-improvement podcasts are there out of 500,000 shows that are still running? If it's 10%, you get 50,000 shows. Like, all things considered, that's not that big. That's not that many people. And when I really started to understand this was when I started going on other shows. And when I researched the shows that I'm going on, I would see that, oh, they just had this person on. Oh, I've seen that person before. That person is on all these podcast apps. It's a very, very small community. And there's a couple important things to realize, right? Number one, making connections within the community is super important. Number two, burning bridges within the community is also something to really, really think about, because you never know who that person knows. Now, I'm not a big networker. I don't really care about networking. We're more focused on building our own thing than making relationships. But for most people, I understand that making relationships is going to be one of the ways to get ahead. Make sure you do it organically and it's within integrity and it's based on core values and all of that. But the community is really small, especially in your echo chamber of whatever it is that you're doing. I mean, 500,000 podcasts, if that's the accurate number that are still running, that's not that many, all things considered. And if 10% of them are in your category, your genre, I mean, that's enough to fill a baseball stadium, right? That's, in the grand scheme of things, it's not that big. So that's an important one to know, just because it might change your behavior. So just to recap, how are we doing on time? Just to recap, number one, what you do before and after the interview are just as important as what you're doing during. The prep, so this is the mastery formula. Prep, you prepare for something. Rep, you show up and actually do it. Reflect, you listen back to the episode and say, what could I have done better? And then you perfect. Based on that information and that feedback, what can I do better next time? So prep, rep, reflect, perfect. That's why what you do before and after is so important. Number two, the difference between sales and marketing and the importance of sales as a whole. Super, super, super important. There's a great book by Robert Cialdini called Influence. It's all about sales and the psychology of sales. So that's a good book for you if you're interested in learning more about that. Number three, how much of the advice I was getting was just bad. Just because somebody is a podcaster does not mean they are a successful podcaster, and it doesn't mean they're doing something that you should necessarily be doing. Number four, a deeper understanding of business. I definitely wish I had that. And number five, how small the community really is. So I'm a couple minutes over here, but I wanted to hammer through these because I think this is a very valuable episode. We actually have a meetup tonight for the other podcast. That is something I will be doing in the near future for this. I will have a Facebook group in the very near future. I will have monthly events where we do behind the scenes Q&As, and it's just kind of me teaching on a topic that is in the works. There's just a lot of other stuff going on. As always, if you are interested in doing a free call, again, I will say it till I'm blue in the face. I'm not going to sell you on anything, but if you want to pick my brain, if you want to say, hey, what's worked for you? If you want to listen to your podcast together, if you want to talk about gear, if you want to talk about guests, if you want to talk about how to get clients, I am happy to chat. It's a free 30-minute call. I just want to add value. It helps me, number one, help you, but it also helps me make better content because I know what you're going through. So I am happy to do that. My link will be in the show notes. My goal is to leave it there for as long as humanly possible. So if you've been hearing me say that and you've thought, oh, maybe I will, just do it. I promise it will be worth your time. And if not, I'll like your podcast and give you a review or something, as long as it's in alignment. Next week for episode number 24, one of the best things I ever did to become a better speaker. Obviously, podcasting is one of them, but I'm going to talk about a specific tactic and deeper understanding that I used. Podcast Growth U, I got to hop off. I appreciate y'all. This has been honestly more successful than I expected. I didn't have high expectations because I know how long it takes to grow stuff, but this is exceeding my expectations. So I'm grateful for you all. I appreciate you all. Please do not ever hesitate to reach out if I can support you in any way. At Never Quit Kid on Instagram is the best place. Everything else is in the show notes, but I am an open book and I want to add value. That is my ultimate goal. Until next week, all the love, keep on podcasting, and I will talk to you very, very soon.